Kami ucapkan selamat siang dan selamat bergabung yang terhormat Bapak dan Ibu dari berbagai bagian di industri di farmasi Indonesia. Terima kasih untuk partisipasinya kepada seluruh peserta yang sudah hadir pada kesempatan siang hari ini yang telah mengikuti acara webinar pada hari ini. Dengan sangat antusias sekali pada kesempatan hari ini, saya Purnomo Prawiryanegara tentu akan memandu acara webinar pada hari ini yang sangat luar biasa ini hingga sampai selesai nanti. Dan agenda acara pada hari ini antara lain seperti ada di layar Bapak dan Ibu. Tadi kita sudah melakukan opening, kemudian nanti akan kedua ada presentasi mengenai water for injection untuk distribution system yang akan disampaikan oleh Bapak Billy Alexander. Kemudian dilanjut dengan USP 63 terbaru di 2021 total organic carbon yang akan dibawakan oleh Mr. Rohit dari Suez. Kemudian nanti sesi ketiga kita memiliki cukup waktu untuk kita akan membacakan beberapa pertanyaan yang Bapak dan Ibu sampaikan. Dan yang terakhir closing dan kita akan foto bersama Bapak Ibu. Tentu dalam Q&A ini kita memiliki atau untuk pertanyaan para peserta pada webinar ini silahkan disampaikan melalui chat box yang sudah disediakan. Jadi nanti silahkan Bapak Ibu yang ada pertanyaan langsung boleh diketik, nanti saat Q&A kita akan coba jawab. Baik rekan-rekan semua, sebelum dimulai acara pada hari ini saya akan memperkenalkan dahulu moderator yang akan memandu webinar pada kesempatan hari itu, yaitu saya sendiri. Aktivitas saya adalah seorang sales manager di PT Vision Teknik yang berada di Jakarta. Dan sekaligus saya perkenalkan para narasumber pada acara webinar ini. Pada kesempatan hari ini, yaitu presenter pertama akan dibawakan oleh Bapak Billy Alexander. Beliau adalah seorang product manager divisi Pharma dari perusahaan PT Awiko Industri Perkasa. Mungkin peserta juga tentu sudah tidak asing lagi. Dan beliau tentu memiliki pengalaman di bidang water system yang mungkin Bapak Ibu juga ada beberapa yang sudah kenal, tidak asing lagi. Kemudian presenter yang kedua akan dibawakan oleh Mr. Rohit Chakravorty. Who are you, sir? I hope you are also in good health today. Beliau adalah seorang product application spesialis dari brand TOC ternama yaitu Suez Water Technology. Beliau berbasis di India. Beliau sangat paham sekali mengenai aplikasi TOC dari cleaning validasi untuk offline hingga online TOC. Untuk itu, mari kita sambut saja presenter pertama yaitu Bapak Billy Alexander. Saya persilahkan waktu dan tempatnya Bapak Billy.
Selamat siang, saya ucapkan kepada Bapak Ibu yang hadir, yang bersedia meluangkan waktunya untuk webinar siang ini. Saya akan mulai presentasi saya akan share screen. Seperti tadi diperkenalkan oleh Pak Purnomo, saya Billy Alexander dari divisi Pharma di PT Awiko Industri Perkasa. Saya hari ini akan membahas water for pharmaceutical industry sesuai dengan USP 1231, khususnya di bagian water for injection. Di USP 1231, water dibagi menjadi dua bagian besar, yaitu bulk water dan package water, di mana bulk water adalah air yang diproduksi on-site dan digunakan secara langsung untuk bahan baku obat-obatan, sedangkan package water adalah air steril yang dipackage secara steril juga untuk menjaga kualitasnya selama shelf life yang sudah ditentukan. Di USP 1231 juga ada 4 tipe water yang ditetapkan, yaitu purified water, water for injection, water for hemodialysis, dan pure steam. Dari water for injection, hari ini, siang ini akan kami bahas dari 5 segi, yaitu dari segi sumber, segi desain untuk storage dan distribution, dari segi construction, material yang diperlukan, dan qualification kriteria dan dari segi operasionalnya. Dalam USP 1231 disebutkan bahwa sumber untuk water for injection tidak harus dari purified water, tapi cukup dari drinking water. Tetapi juga harus memenuhi kriteria sesuai tabel di bawah ini, yaitu pH, conductivity, dissolved solids, chlorides, free chlorine, amonia, total hardness, silika, dan endotoxin. Untuk WFE generator dapat dihasilkan melalui distillation, proses distillation, dan hasilnya adalah hot water for injection. Tetapi sejak 2017, European Pharmacopoeia dan United States Pharmacopoeia mengizinkan untuk produksi cold water for injection menggunakan sistem RO, EDI, dan ultrafiltration. Terlampir adalah skid distillation unit dari partner kita, yaitu BWT, Best Water Technology. Kami sudah berpartner di berbagai project farmasi, di mana BWT menyediakan unit purified water generator, water for injection generator, dan pure steam generatornya. Dan kami yang mengerjakan distribution dan storage sistemnya. Di sini dapat dilihat ada multi-effect distillation unitnya yang menghasilkan hot water for injection. Sedangkan untuk cold water for injection, karena ini adalah sesuatu yang baru, jadi dengan suhu yang tidak terlalu tinggi, tentunya ada resiko bakteri lebih banyak berkembang dan terbentuknya biofilm. Jadi requirement untuk parameter yang harus diawasi pada saat produksi maupun final product itu lebih ketat daripada produksi hot water for injection. Di bagian ini saya tampilkan skid untuk cold water for injection production dari BWT, terdiri dari TOC measurement, anti-scalant dosing, reverse osmosis, EDI, ultrafiltration, dan heat exchanger untuk thermal sanitation. Melalui skid ini, perusahaan Anda dapat mendapatkan hasil water for injection yang jauh di bawah syarat European Pharmacopoeia. Tentunya dalam menentukan apakah perusahaan Anda memerlukan WFE hot generation atau cold WFE generation ditentukan dari berbagai macam aspek, yaitu dari segi utilitas yang diperlukan, karena utilitas untuk hot water for injection generator cukup tinggi, memerlukan steam dan cooling water juga. Dan apakah produk-produk yang dihasilkan perusahaan Anda lebih banyak memerlukan hot WFI ataukah cold WFI, dan apakah produk di pipeline perusahaan Anda lebih banyak memerlukan hot WFI dan cold WFI. Untuk sekedar informasi, cold WFI generation sudah mendapatkan approval dari BPOM, tetapi masih belum ada industri farmasi di Indonesia yang menggunakan cold water for injection generation ini. Untuk presentasi siang ini, kami akan menggunakan hot water for injection system. Dari segi desain, tentunya kami PT Aweko Industri Perkasa sebagai desainer untuk menentukan kapasitas tangki dan kapasitas pompa yang dibutuhkan, kami memerlukan data-data dari perusahaan Anda, data-data kebutuhan air produksi yang akurat supaya kami bisa menentukan kapasitas tangki yang dibutuhkan. Kami tangkinya juga kami desain untuk dapat menampung hot water. Jadi dengan pressure 3 bar full vacuum dan dengan desain temperature 120 sampai 150 derajat Celcius. Tangki kami juga lengkapi dengan capability untuk menjaga stabilitas suhu WFI. Jadi tangki kami lengkapi dengan jaket dan insulation. Tangki terbuat dari material SS316L karena lebih anti korosif. Untuk internal finish, kami selalu menggunakan mirror finish untuk menjaga smooth kehalusan internal surface-nya. Jadi tidak ada crevice di mana bakteria bisa bertumbuh. Tangki juga dilengkapi dengan spray ball, safety valve atau rupture disc untuk menjaga apabila tangki overpressure, dilengkapi dengan level transmitter, steam aksesoris untuk keperluan jaket, dan hydrophobic fan filter untuk menjaga supaya partikel dari udara luar tidak masuk ke tangki yang steril. Untuk distribution, kami menyarankan agar terjadinya sirkulasi looping yang secara terus-menerus, jadi continuous dan permanent circulation of water. Suhu looping kami jaga di atas suhu 70 derajat Celcius, dan untuk menjaga kualitas air dan untuk mencegah terbentuknya biofilm, flow rate kami sarankan di level turbulent, yaitu dengan Reynolds number di atas 10.000, atau lebih kami sarankan mengikuti standar 3 feet per second atau 1 meter per second. Untuk konstruksi piping, kami sarankan harus fully drainable dengan slope di atas 1% dan tidak mempunyai dead lag. Dead lag di mana artinya ada area-area di mana ada air yang mati, air yang tidak ikut tersirkulasi dalam looping system. Jadi apabila ada air mati, di situ ada potensi bakteria untuk bisa tumbuh. Distribution system juga kami desain untuk memenuhi kebutuhan produksi perusahaan Anda. Jadi kami dari data air yang Anda berikan itu juga menentukan kapasitas tangki dan juga kapasitas pompa yang diperlukan dan size dari piping yang akan digunakan. Untuk sanitasi cukup menggunakan air yang dipanaskan di suhu 80-90 derajat atau dapat juga dengan pure steam di suhu yang jauh lebih tinggi secara periodik apabila dibutuhkan, apabila kualitas WFI mulai menunjukkan tren penurunan. Untuk kontrol sistem dapat menggunakan PLC, di mana user dapat secara mudah memonitor online critical parameter di looping system. Untuk construction, tentunya dilengkapi dengan storage tank, seperti foto yang di screen. Tangki ini terbuat dari stainless steel, dilengkapi dengan jaket dan installation untuk menjaga kestabilan suhu WFI yang disuplai. Dari tangki ini, kami juga selalu menyediakan customer buku yang berjudul Manufacturing Data Book, di mana di dalam buku ini terdapat sertifikat Depnaker karena tangki WFI ini adalah bejana pertekanan. Jadi harus ada sertifikat Depnakernya, juga ada sertifikat material, as-built drawing, dan sertifikat welder, ada sertifikat report hidrotestnya, dan passivation reportnya. Untuk menjaga flow rate yang stabil di looping system, kami menggunakan centrifugal pump yang telah kami hitung supaya dapat memenuhi kebutuhan produksi perusahaan Anda. Centrifugal pump-nya juga memiliki hygienic design dengan adanya nozzle, drain nozzle di level terendah pompa. Untuk material pemipaan, kami menggunakan material-material dengan standar ASME BPE, di mana di piping selalu ada marking manufacturer's name dan heat number dan spesifikasi material, dan selalu dilengkapi dengan sertifikat seperti contoh di layar, di mana tertera nama manufacturer, spesifikasi material, heat number, dan sertifikat ID. Hal ini adalah bertujuan untuk traceability waktu validasi di kemudian hari. Untuk piping, untuk fitting, kami juga menggunakan material standar ASME BPE, dan juga disertai dengan contoh sertifikat seperti berikut, di mana ada sertifikat ID, spesifikasi material, heat number, dan manufacturer's name. Dan juga dapat dilihat ada marking di aktual barangnya yang harus sesuai dengan material test report yang dilampirkan. Untuk instrumen, kami sarankan untuk menggunakan instrumen yang mempunyai sertifikat kalibrasi yang dapat diverifikasi. Seperti contohnya, ini ada sertifikat kalibrasi dari supplier dengan menyertakan sertifikat number dan tanggal kalibrasinya dan serial number instrumen tersebut. Sertifikat kalibrasi biasanya jangka waktunya 1 tahun, dan setelah 1 tahun customer diwajibkan untuk mengkalibrasi ulang setiap instrumen yang ada di loop system yang sudah terinstall. Untuk pengelasan pemipaan, kami menggunakan orbital welding karena prosesnya automated dan dapat menghasilkan hasil welding yang konsisten. Tentunya gas yang digunakan juga harus diperhatikan, yaitu dengan menggunakan high purity argon dengan konsentrasi 99,99% ke atas. Dan tentunya disertai dengan sertifikat dari produsen. Di gambar di bawah ini dapat Bapak Ibu lihat antara nomor 1 dan nomor 10, perbedaannya adalah di gas argon yang digunakan. Jadi semakin murni argon yang digunakan, hasil orbital welding akan semakin bersih, semakin putih dibandingkan dengan item nomor 10 yang hasilnya kecoklat-coklatan gosong. Jadi perlu diperhatikan juga gas yang kita gunakan. Untuk user point yang kami gunakan untuk menghindari adanya dead lag di looping system, kami menggunakan T-body zero dead lag diaphragm valve untuk setiap point of use. Di sini ada foto aktual T-body diaphragm. Ada standarnya, ada materialnya, ada size-nya, dan ada heat number-nya. Dan foto ini adalah aktual point of use yang terpasang di salah satu proyek kami. Dapat dilihat T-body-nya menyatu dengan looping sistemnya, jadi tidak ada dead lag dan tidak ada air yang mengendap, tidak ikut sirkulasi. Dapat dilihat juga piping kami insulation demi keamanan dan safety user yang menggunakan. Di gambar ini kami juga bandingkan antara WFI loop yang ada insulation-nya dan PW loop dengan suhu ambien tanpa insulation, tapi kedua-duanya menggunakan user point T-body zero dead lag diaphragm valve. Qualification kriteria sesuai dengan USP, WFI harus memiliki conductivity di bawah 1,3 mikrosiemens di 25 derajat Celcius dan total organik karbon di bawah 500 ppb, dan hal ini akan dibahas lebih lanjut oleh Mr. Rohit, Principal SWES, karena ada beberapa perubahan di USP 643 yang berlaku efektif 1 Mei 2021, dan ada kriteria bakteria dan ada kriteria endotoksin. Dua kriteria conductivity dan total organic carbon ini dapat diinkorporasikan secara online di loop system dan dapat dimonitor langsung melalui HMI di PLC. Sedangkan faktor bakteria dan endotoksin biasanya dilakukan pengecekan secara offline di lab masing-masing perusahaan. PLC yang kami gunakan, tipikal tampilannya adalah seperti berikut ini, di mana ada loop system, ada alarm setting, di mana user dapat men-setting minimum dan maksimum value setiap parameter yang terdapat di loop system. Ada alarm log dan data log untuk traceability, dan apabila user klik loop system akan muncul tampilan sebagai berikut, di mana user dapat memonitor secara online setiap parameter yang terdapat di loop system, baik itu level tangki, kapasitas pompa, supply pressure, supply temperature, value TOC, return temperature, return pressure, return velocity, dan juga suhu tangki. Dapat dilihat ini adalah typical PNID WFI loop dengan all hot POU. Jadi POU-nya menghasilkan WFI yang hot. Untuk beberapa customer yang kami pernah jumpai, mereka ada request, mereka membutuhkan WFI cold untuk bahan baku obat mereka. Untuk customer-customer tersebut, kami pasang heat exchanger sebagai berikut untuk dapat menghasilkan WFI yang cold. Dapat dilihat di video ini, apabila user point tidak terbuka, WFI loop hanya tetap bersirkulasi di heat exchanger tersebut. Dan apabila cold POU dibuka, cooling water akan mulai mendinginkan WFI loop tersebut sampai suhu tercapai dan cold POU terbuka. Di foto ini dapat dilihat aktual heat exchanger yang terpasang di salah satu proyek kami, dan ini adalah POU yang hot POU yang akan terbuka apabila suhu sudah tercapai. Heat exchanger tersebut bukan satu-satunya jalan untuk mendapatkan cold POU, karena kami juga mendesain sistem di mana kami juga dapat menghasilkan cold WFE. Kami bisa di sini kami mensuplai HE untuk cooling, sehingga WFE yang keluar dari cold POU adalah cold, kemudian ada HE heater di mana WFE akan dipanaskan kembali sebelum masuk kembali ke main loop WFE yang hot. Untuk commissioning, kami menyediakan dokumen IQOQ. Dokumen IQ terdiri dari material test reports dari piping dan fitting yang terinstall, calibration dari instrumen yang terpasang, slope dari piping, poroscope report dari welding, hydro test, dan passivation report dari piping. Di gambar ini dapat Bapak Ibu lihat, ini adalah hasil poroscope untuk mengecek apakah welding sudah sesuai dengan standar ASME BPE. Dan untuk pressure test, kami gunakan standar di 6 bar dengan minimum holding time 30 menit tergantung panjangnya loop system. Dan di sini dapat dilihat kami holding 6 bar selama 2 jam karena kami ingin benar-benar memastikan tidak ada leakage di looping system di proyek kami. Untuk passivation, kami menggunakan standar Kozlow, pengecekan dengan metode Kozlow, di mana kriterianya dapat dilihat di bawah ini. Apabila sudah mencapai pasif, kami anggap pasivasi sudah berhasil dan free iron sudah ter-remove dari loop system dan sudah terbentuk oxide layer yang membuat loop system lebih anti-korosif. Passivation kami mulai dengan proses degreasing dengan menggunakan caustic soda. Untuk passivation kami menggunakan nitric acid, dan untuk langkah terakhir cleaning kami menggunakan hydrogen peroxide. Untuk OQ kami melakukan velocity test. Kami tes apakah pompa dapat mensuplai flow rate yang stabil di loop system dengan membuka 1 atau 2 POU. Untuk heating test juga kami mengetes apakah utilitasnya cukup untuk menjaga kestabilitasan suhu WFE di dalam tangki dan di dalam looping system juga. Dan untuk operational trial kami mengetes apakah PLC dapat berjalan sesuai sebagaimana yang dikehendaki. Setelah semua ini dilakukan, kami handover kepada customer untuk memulai PQ mereka. Sekian presentasi dari kami. Terima kasih saya ucapkan atas perhatiannya. Apabila ada pertanyaan dapat disampaikan melalui chat box dan kami akan mereply secepat mungkin.
Terima kasih Pak Billy atas waktu dan penyampaian presentasinya, sangat detail sekali dan sangat baik sekali. Tentu seperti yang saya informasikan kembali, untuk pertanyaan Bapak Ibu nanti di Q&A-nya kita akan beberapa sampaikan, tapi yang belum sempat disampaikan kita nanti akan tetap kirimkan via email melalui email yang sudah terdaftar di pendaftaran. Kemudian kita berlanjut ke presenter kedua, yaitu Mr. Rohit Cakaforti yang akan membawakan mengenai TOC. Thank you for Mr. Rohit. Are you ready? Now you can present for your presentation today with about the USB 463. Thank you for your please for your time.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Purnomo.
Yes.
I hope everyone can see.
Sorry, Mr. Rohit. Can you show the slide? Yes, yes. Okay. Thank you very much. Sorry, I'm cut your voice.
Fine. So should I start?
Yes. No. Okay.
Sure. Thanks, Purnomo, and thanks, Mr. Billy, for presenting about the WFI regulations and what does USB say about the water for injection. So, good afternoon, everyone, first of all, and thank you for taking time out from a busy schedule to attend this webinar. My name is Rohit, and I look after the application support for the life science business of the Sivas TOC brand, which is a part of Suez. So this will be the agenda for today. I'll just give a background of USB 643 and TUC regulations, what are there. Also in 2021 May, there was a revision made to the USB chapter number 643. So we'll discuss what the changes are and how can we support our customers to comply with this chapter. And then we'll summarize and then open the lines for questions. So as Mr. Billy rightly said about the qualifying tests which are required for water for injection, those are TOC, conductivity, endotoxin, and biowood. So out of the 4 critical tests, Suez, we as a manufacturer are offering solution for the 3 tests like TOC, conductivity, and a new technology that we have come up with is the endotoxin. I won't be discussing much about the endotoxin in this call, but in case you are interested to learn more, you can reach out to Vision Technique and Park Purnomo can help you understand. So starting with, in general, what is organic carbon before we do a deep dive in the USB 643. So organic carbon is nothing but when carbon and hydrogen are covalently linked to each other and upon oxidation they form carbon dioxide. Such kind of carbon containing molecules are called as organic carbon. So example, glucose, sucrose, potassium hydrogen thalate are examples of organic carbon where carbon and hydrogen are covalently linked to each other. The origin of organic carbon is available in nature and it's available naturally in vegetation, algae, sediments, and also as particles in water. And the content of the organic carbon varies from region to region and season to season. So, for example, a river water in summer season in hot conditions might have a different TOC, whereas in winter or autumn or spring, the TOC can be different. So it all depends on how the climatic conditions are, and the content keeps on changing depending on the surrounding conditions. So what's the importance of TOC monitoring in the industry? So first of all, water, which is a very critical raw material and the major raw material required to manufacture the medicines. So that's the reason it's very important to check the quality of water. And the key parameters to check the quality of water are TUC, conductivity, endotoxin, and bioburden, especially for the water for injection. So as water is the major raw material, TOC can be an indicative marker of the purity of the water. So as Mr. Billy has presented already, the skid systems that they have, which helps in generating the water for injection, and also they have solutions for the purification and the generation of the water. In that case, whether the system is working fine or not, how can you judge whether the water is being purified? So TUC, conductivity, and endotoxin and bioburden are kinds of markers that the water system and the generation system are working fine, are in place, or they can also give you notification of any early contamination if you have, or any kind of biofilm which are found. So those kind of indicators, those kind of information can be received by doing TUC and conducting another test. So why test purified water? Because as I said, it gives an information whether your source water is contaminated. It also helps us understand whether my purification system is working fine or not, or if there is any failure, or maybe a valve is not closing properly, or there is a leakage in any kind of pipe. So in that all cases, the TUC and other parameters go up. So it's kind of a good indicator. And TUC also helps us to understand whether there is any contamination in the generation and the purification system, whether there is any biofilm formation. Should we now do the sanitation of the uh, entire water system? The pharmacopoeia acceptance limit, be it USP, EP, China pharmacopoeia, Indian pharmacopoeia, Korean pharmacopoeia, Japanese pharmacopoeia, everyone has a limit of 500 ppb. This is for bulk water. So the compendial requirement for any kind of instrument, any kind of use instrument is the compendial. I mean the pharmacopoeia. The pharmacopoeia never says that this brand of use is good or that brand of use is good. But then what it says is whatever instrument you use should have a limit of detection of less than 0.05 ppm, which is less than 50 ppb. The instrument should be able to oxidize the organic carbon to form CO2. So as we discussed in the definition, what is organic carbon? When carbon and hydrogen are covalently linked to each other, and upon oxidation they form carbon dioxide, such molecules are called as organic. So similarly, the instrument should be capable to oxidize the organic carbon to CO2. And as per the pharmacopoeia guidelines, there are some challenging tests which are called as system suitability. So system suitability test gives us an idea of whether the instrument is reporting fine or not, and then you can start an analysis. And whatever technology that we use for to monitor TOC, it should be discrimination of TC and IC. So TC is the total carbon, IC is inorganic carbon, and the TOC which we obtain should be a subtraction of total carbon minus inorganic. So I have summarized all the pharmacopoeia regulations or expectations in one table. So everyone, more or less, if you see, are having the same limit of less than 500 ppb. So it doesn't change much. USP, EP, China and Indian pharmacopoeia, they have same system suitability compounds. And what they have done is they have kept the standard open for calibration, and they say that it should be as per manufacturer's recommendation. Whereas if you see Japanese and Korean pharmacopoeia, it's a bit more scientific as compared to the other pharmacopoeias that we have. And they have mandated it for raw water, purified water, and water for injection. Even for USP 643, as per 1998 monograph, it's mandated for purified water, WF, and sterile packaged water, the TUC monitoring. The difference between Japanese and Japanese Korean versus the other pharmacopoeias is that the system suitability compounds are separate and the calibration is by use of THP. That's the only difference. Rest everything more or less is the same. So just I have summarized the chapter number 643 in one table. And this is the older version of it. There has been a new revision and which is effective from May 2021. So it's already in effect. So what this chapter USP 643, the older version said, is that the bulk water TUC limit is 500 ppb. It means that the water which is coming out after purification and from the generation system should be less than 500 ppb of TUC. And this is only for the bulk water. For sterile packaged water, the limit was that the TUC should be less than 8 ppm after blank correction. So whatever blank is also used to monitor the TUC. So the blank after blank correction, 8 ppm should be the value. Sample water should meet the requirement, and it should be not more than the limit response. Limit response means the 500 ppb limit and the 8 ppm limit for the sterile packaged water. And in the new edition that we had this year, which is in effect from May 2021, everything is same for bulk water. So the bulk water testing remains the same. The limit remains the same, which is 500 ppb. The sterile water criteria have changed. So the sterile water criteria, especially how to perform the SST and what should be the acceptance criteria, has changed. And the change is because of the different container size that they have put in. Earlier, the sterile packaged water, which was 8 ppm limit, was the only one limit that they have now. So it was irrespective of any kind of container size. But now, if you see the sterile packaged water section in the chapter 643, there are different three types of container size segregation, and based on the size of the container, the limit of TUC is also different, and the limit for system suitability is also different. So moving on with what's changed and what's not. So as I said, bulk water chapter remains the same. The system suitability criteria, also the criteria which was that the system suitability recovery, the combined recovery should be between 85% to 115% of sucrose and benzoprolol. It still remains the same. So the only thing that has changed is the limits and at what range for what kind of container size the system suitability is to be performed. So here I have just pasted the section from the revised chapter. So as you can see, the limit of passing is between 85% to 115% of recovery. If it's less than 85% or more than 115%, the SST fails as it was earlier. So this criteria of passing the system suitability remains the same, but the only change is to the size of container. So now if you see, USP has segregated uh, the container size into three parts: less than 5 ml packaged container for sterile water, containers more than 5 ml and less than 100 ml, and the containers with more than 100 ml capacity for the packaged water. So these are the three main classes. And if you see, the system suitability requirement for less than 5 ml container is 48 ppm. So it's way too high. Earlier it was 8 ppm, but now based on their study, what they have seen that the smaller the container size, the same is the material, right? So the volume of water is also very less, which is less than 5 ml. So in that case, whatever organic carbon is leaching out from the packaging material, because of which the concentration will be very high. So as the concentration of the container increases, the water inside also gets increased, because of which, if at all there is any leaching from the container, because there is more water, so it gets diluted. And that's the reason if you see, the increase in container size leads to the decrease in the limit of passing. So if the container volume is for more than 100 ml, the carbon concentration for the SST is 12 ppm. If it's between 5 to 100, the passing criteria for SST, which is for benzoquinone, is 36 ppm. And if it's less than 5, the passing criteria is 48 ppm. Earlier, there was just one limit, irrespective of size of container. So now this is more scientifically justified, I feel, because yeah, the logic remains the same. Smaller the container size and smaller the amount of water inside, higher is the leachability, and that's the reason they have kept higher limits for small container size. Similarly goes for sucrose. If you see, now in sucrose is the standard solution. So as you can see here, there is something called as limit 1 and there is something called as limit 2. So limit 1 and limit 2 are the two separate limits for the standard solution that they have mentioned. So how to choose which limit to comply with, we'll discuss it in our forthcoming slides. So same logic goes here as well. less than 5 ml of container size, the limit one for sucrose is 32 ppm. I am looking at this table and not this table, because this table, the second part, which is the equivalent carbon concentration, talks about the carbon. Here it is the concentration of the entire sucrose. But in sucrose, as we all know, it's a carbohydrate chain. It has hydrogen, it has oxygen as well. So equivalent carbon concentration of 76 ppm of sucrose is 32 ppm. So that's the reason, because TUC monitors only carbon. So we are monitoring only this part here. But when you prepare in order to achieve 32 ppm of carbon, you have to prepare 76 ppm of sucrose. 76 ppm is 76 mg in 1 ml. Similarly, for 5 to 100 ml container size, the carbon concentration is 24. And for more than 100 ml container size, the carbon concentration for L1 is 8. L2 is something that we'll discuss what L2 is. L2 is if the result fails the limit 1, the first limit, then you have to move forward and compare your result with the second limit. So how can we support you to comply with the system suitability and the other parameters that you have because of this new edited version of the USP 643? So we have an app note where we have described about the flow rates. So as you know that for bulk water, we have a different section of TUC, which is checkpoint and which is M500. And the limit of those TUCs is only up to 2.5 ppm. That's good for bulk water. But when you talk about sterile water or packaged water, in that case, the TUC requirement is up to 48 ppm. So in that case, we have a separate instrument for pharma, which is called as M9. It can be used in lab. It is also available in a portable format, and we also have an online version of it. So we have an app note where how much acid, how much oxidizer, or how the method development should be done when you are validating your study or when you are doing a system suitability. Because of the high ppm, you may not know how much acid and how much oxidizer has to be used. So we have something called as auto reagent mode. In case you would not like to use the auto reagent mode, we have the recommended flow rates in the app note, which we have come out with. We also have the standard sets for each bracket, because now if you see the system suitability process has become very tedious, and for different container size you have to comply with different limits of system suitability. So what we do is we provide a 4-vial pack for system suitability. Earlier it was a 3-vial pack. So the first vial is the reagent water, so that you can correct your blank. The second vial is for the limit 1 of sucrose. The third one is for the limit 2 of system suitability of sucrose. And the fourth one is the limit 2 of system suitability of benzene. So these two are the system suitability standard. This is your just a verification standard, and this is the reagent water that we have. So these are the part numbers in case there are any customers who already have our M9 or 900 model and would like to comply with the sterile packaged water testing, and they might not be sure like how to prepare the standards and will that be easy to reproduce day to day. So in case they would like to buy our standards, these are the part numbers that we have. You can get it from Vision Technique later on. And this is a screenshot of what I have pasted is the acid and oxidizer flow rate depending on the container size. So what we have done some research and development in our applications lab in United States. And what we have come up with is that for less than 5 ml container size, the oxidizer flow rate of 9 microliter per minute and acid flow rate of 1 microliter per minute is good to give you complete 100% oxidation. Because here the organic carbon value is very high, which is 48 ppm that we saw. When the container size is between 5 to 100 ml, in that case, the oxidizer flow rate drops because the organic carbon content in the sample also drops. So the oxidizer required is high only when the concentration of organic carbon is high. If the concentration of organic carbon is low, in that case, the oxidizer required is also low. So these are the recommended flow rates that we have. We do have an note on it as well. Moving on to the acceptance criteria, like what is the acceptance criteria? Prior to this, what we discussed and talked about was the system suitability, how to do the system suitability with the changed regulation. Now, once we are done with the system suitability and our results are passed, we would like to analyze the samples. So when we analyze the samples, what is the passing criteria or the acceptance criteria? So the passing criteria for container size less than 5 ml is 32 ppm. If the results are less than 32 ppm, the result is pass. If it's more than 32 ppm, then there are additional steps that we will discuss. Similarly, the acceptance criteria for container size more than 5 and less than 100 ml is 24 ppm of carbon. And if the container size is beyond 100 ml, then the pricing criteria is 8 ppm. Now, this remains the same as the older limit which we had prior to this new revision, which was made in May 2021. So 8 ppm was a flat limit at that point of time. Here, for containers more than 100 ml, 8 ppm is the cutoff value. So the limit or the water which you have after packaging it in the container should be less than 8 ppm for more than 100 ml container size. So USP has put in a stage testing. So what do we mean by stage testing? So stage testing, as you can see here, limit 1 and limit 2. So the limit 1 is the main limit that you have and is the first limit that you have to observe. So if the water sample that you run meets limit 1 criteria, or which is less than the L1 value, then the sample is a pass. There is no further addition steps that you have. If the sample is more than limit 1, then the second limit comes into picture. Like for example, I'll go back. So if the sample limit is 34 ppm, so it has failed the first limit. The second limit is it should be less than 48 ppm. So is 34 less than 48? Yes, it's less than 48. So the result is a pass. Then if suppose the sample result comes as 49 ppm, in that case, if you see for less than 5 ml containers I'm talking about, this is just an example. So if it's 49 ppm, it has failed the limit 2, and you have to go again and check the source of contamination, or you have to do a retesting of the same sample. So it should be less than 48 ppm. Now, as we discussed in the second criteria, as you can see that if it's more than L1 but less than L2, what USP has said that fine, the limit, if it's less than L2 but more than L1, like for example, if I'll go back again, if it's 34 ppm, now fine, it has failed the first limit, but it is within the second limit. So if it's 34 ppm, the result is passed, but then there has to be a further investigation on what specific organic is causing the spike. So that is something that is an extra step that the pharma manufacturers have to do. So what they have to do is they have to classify all the species. So for example, the container is a plastic bag. Fine. So the plastic bag that you have is made up of polymers. It's made up of coloring materials. Like some containers you can see red color. Some containers you have which is whitish. Some containers you have yellowish. So it's all coloring agents, additives, stabilizers, which are added along with the polymer, which is your plastic. So in that case, you have to segregate each and every component which makes the entire packaging system. And then you have to test individually if all the organic species are less than 0.2 ppm. If it's less than 0.2 ppm, in that case, which is 200 ppb, then the result is a pass. And it is it is advised that the packaging material that you have is not hazardous to the patient, but it's safe. If the limit goes beyond zero point 0.2 ppm for a specific kind of plastic material, in that case, it has to be evaluated for the safety. For example, there are 10 different materials inside a polymer, which is a packaging material. And when you segregately test, means when you test separately all the different components which make up that plastic, in that case, if any of the one is beyond 200 ppb or zero point 0.2 ppm, then that specific material has to be tested for the safety. So then comes the allowable daily intake value and other stuff. So that is the extra exercise that you have to do if your limit one fails, but limit two is passing. So you have to characterize the individual materials which are present inside the packaging material. So this is what it has said in the same USP chapter. And quantify each individual organic impurity exceeding the concentration of 0.2 ppm. So this is only when the limit is more than L1 but less than L2. So just to simplify, for container size less than or equal to 5 ml, determine the L1 by running sucrose at 32 ppm carbon, subtracting the reagent water for blank correction, and then perform system suitability with benzoquinone at 48 ppm, and the combined recovery should be less than 115% and should be between 85% to 115%. If the system suitability is passing, proceed to sample analysis. For container size between 5 to 100 ml, determine the L1 by running sucrose at 24 ppm carbon and then subtract the reagent water, which is a black. Then perform system suitability with sucrose and benzoquinone at 36 ppm, and the combined recovery again should be between 85 to 115. If it fails in any of this step, you have to rerun the system suitability and you can't start analyzing your sample. If the system suitability is passed, only then proceed to sample analysis. The same goes for container size more than 100 ml. Now this is the sample analysis. So the previous slide was on system suitability. And once you are done with system suitability, then you proceed to sample analysis. And now if the container size that you have is less than or equal to 5 ml, or if it's between 5 to 100 ml, or if it's more than 100 ml, there are separate limits as we discussed for all the three types of containers. If for all the kinds of category, the sample limit is less than L1, in that case, the sample is passed and the test is complete. That's all on the left-hand side that you see. If it fails the L1, then determine the L2. And the L2, if the sample is more than L1, less than L2, then in that case, identify the organic impurities as per step number 2.9.6 in the USP 643. And each impurity should not be exceeding 200 ppb or 0.2 ppm of carbon. If it exceeds, if it exceeds, in that case, it has to be evaluated for safety. On the other hand, if the sample also fails the level 2, which is, for example, for 5 ml is 48 ppm and for 100 ml it's 8 ppm, in that case, if it fails even that limit or it crosses even the L2, the sample is a complete fail and the test is complete. So it means that the sample doesn't qualify for further process and it has to be discarded, or the root cause has to be identified. So this is the application note that we have. We came up with this in February 2021. It's freely available on our website. In case you would like to access it, you can contact Vision Technique and they can help you with the application. So just to summarize what we discussed, the bulk water requirements like the 500 ppb limit remains the same if it's for bulk water. The change has only applied for the sterile packaged water. So only for sterile testing, if anyone is doing sterile packaged water testing, in that case only this change is going to affect you. If you are just using the routine WFI bulk water for your manufacturing process, it doesn't matter. And it's just the 500 ppb limit that you have. The system suitability concentration for sterile, what for the sterile packaged water at the sample limits will be container volume dependent. The standards are available with us in case you would like to get ready-made USP and NIC traceable standards. We have it. It comes with a certificate, and the field service bulletin, which is the app which I was talking about, is now available on our website. In case you feel that you have any questions and it wasn't answered in this session, we can always discuss in the I would like to thank you all. I would like to thank Vision Technique for organizing this beautiful event, and it's been done very well. And I wish you all a very good health and hope you all stay safe and sound. And thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rohit. Very enthusiastic for your presentation and very good for today. Now we on sesi, jadi sekarang ini mohon maaf saya pakai bahasa Indonesia kembali ya. Kita akan masuk ke sesi tanya jawab. Juga saya sambil menunggu beberapa informasi yang akan saya sampaikan untuk sesi tanya jawab, menginformasikan bagi para peserta yang sudah bergabung, mohon dapat membantu untuk mengisi daftar absen yang ada di link chatbox. Linknya sudah disampaikan di chat box-nya dan Bapak Ibu bisa mengisinya untuk nanti akan dikirimkan sertifikat elektronik sesuai dengan informasi yang disampaikan pada link tersebut. Baik, untuk sesi pertanyaan ini saya akan sampaikan pertanyaan dari Bapak Danu P. Dengan satu, antara lain, apakah ada perbedaan persyaratan kualitas WFI untuk parameter conductivity antara pemeriksaan secara inline dengan pemeriksaan offline? Dan kedua, untuk sistem WFI yang tidak looping, apakah diperlukan pengamatan kualitas WFI secara periodik? Ketiga, untuk sanitasi tangki menggunakan hot steam pada suhu 122 derajat Celcius, durasi sanitasi idealnya berapa lama? Apakah ada syarat minimal pressure juga untuk melakukan sanitasi tank dengan hot steam? Mungkin dari pertanyaan ini saya coba untuk dibantu oleh Pak Billy, ya Pak Billy ya, supaya Pak Danu juga dan yang lain bisa mendengar jawaban yang akan disampaikan oleh Pak Billy. Silakan Pak Billy waktunya.
Oh iya, sudah saya jawab ke Pak Danu secara personal sih Pak. Jadi jawaban saya syarat conductivity-nya harus tetap sama meskipun online atau offline. Tetapi mungkin lebih baik kami sarankan untuk offline karena offline itu banyak faktor yang dapat mempengaruhi level conductivity seperti cara pengambilan,
Betul, ya.
Terus filenya bersih atau tidak, dan jangka waktu di filenya ya, itu kan bisa mempengaruhi nilai conductivity-nya semua. Jadi kami tetap sarankan untuk online conductivity diinkorporasikan dalam looping sistemnya Pak Danu. Dan untuk WFI kami sarankan untuk looping, jadi tidak untuk yang tidak looping. Untuk sistem sanitasi, tadi pertanyaannya durasi idealnya berapa lama? Mungkin sekitar 30 menit sudah cukup, pressure 1 bar.
Baik, berarti untuk sistem WFI itu memang looping itu artinya sirkulasi ya Pak, terkait dengan pertanyaan yang lain ya Pak ya?
Ya,
Ya, baik.
Harus sirkulasi, jadi menjaga supaya airnya tetap mengalir dan tidak ada air yang stagnan.
Baik, yang seperti yang Bapak sebutkan di presentasi tadi supaya menghindari dead lag ya Pak ya?
Ya, menghindari dead lag dan tumbuhnya bakteri.
Baik, mungkin penjelasan dari Pak Billy cukup jelas. Terima kasih Pak untuk penjelasannya. Kemudian juga dari pertanyaan nomor 2 mungkin saya sebutkan juga dari Pak Revelino ya. Putra Perdana, mohon infonya. 1. Apakah membran diafragma valve di POU perlu dilakukan penggantian rutin untuk mencegah mikro? Kemudian yang kedua, analisa seperti apa untuk investigasi munculnya mikro cuma di beberapa area tertentu? WFI produksi oleh Kombitron BWT dengan code system. Terima kasih. Mungkin mohon maaf dengan Pak Billy kembali. Pak Billy, mengenai pertanyaan dari Pak Revelino ini, boleh dibantu untuk dijelaskan Pak Billy. Terima kasih.
Untuk penggantian membran diafram, saya rasa tidak perlu dilakukan penggantian rutin untuk mencegah mikro karena WFI-nya kan sudah jalan hot. Jadi secara tidak langsung diafram juga tersanitasi ya Pak.
Baik.
Dan asal flow rate-nya juga dijaga turbulen atau 1 meter per second. Dan untuk yang pertanyaan kedua, analisa seperti apa untuk investigasi munculnya mikro, mungkin investigasi offline untuk bakteri dan endotoksinnya, Pak.
Baik, terima kasih. Mungkin sudah sangat jelas Pak Billy untuk penjelasannya, karena pertanyaannya terkait dengan masih water system ya Pak Billy, jadi saya masih nanyanya ke Pak Billy nih. Pak, ini saya juga mungkin saya nggak bisa sebutin atau bacakan satu persatu untuk pertanyaannya, tapi saya akan ambil beberapa yang terbaik. Pertanyaan dari Cahayu Putri Anadia. Oh, sudah ya.
Ya, Ibu Cahaya ini pertanyaannya TOC-nya naik saat stagnan. Jadi maksudnya di stagnan water lagi.
Kalau yang itu kayaknya saya cek udah ya Pak, udah terjawab ya Pak ya tadi ya.
Iya, kami tidak menyarankan air stagnan Pak, jadi bisa bakterinya tumbuh.
Baik.
Jadi air harus tetap mengalir dengan turbulen, Reynolds number di atas 10.000 atau minimum 1 meter per second.
Baik Pak Billy, terima kasih untuk jawabannya. Saya loncat kembali untuk pertanyaan yang keempat, berarti dari Bu Astrid Sepira. Mungkin ini ke Mr. Rohit. Hey, good day. I have few question. 1. May you explain more in detail about water system passivation? Who should be done? Which system or part should be included in the frequency? Number 2. How do we detect biofilm in the system and how it can be removed completely and efficiency? Number 3, the pharmacopoeia acceptance of WFE recommended not more than 500 ppb. Can we have our own criteria that is not more than 500 ppb, and if so, who to decide on the level? Number 4, must system suitability be performed for PAC WFE? How often system suitability must be performed?
Purnama, sorry to break you. Can we go one question at one time?
Okay, Ken. Maybe I can share your. Wait. Share. Yeah. Belum ya?
Yeah, so no problem. You can tell me the first question, then I'll answer, and then we can have second question.
Wait. Maybe can.
I think the first and second questions are for me, Pak.
Okay. Can have to answer, Pak Billy.
So the passivation must be done after the installation is complete. It's part of the validation documentation. So you need to do repassivation periodically to if you see any rogging in your piping system, you need to passivate again. And the second question, how do we detect biofilm, is by the conductivity level, and it can be removed by sanitation by hot water or pure steam.
Okay, thank you, Pak Billy. And then question after Mr. Billy. Mr. Rohit, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Yeah. Number 3, maybe the pharmacopoeia acceptance of VFE recommended not more than 500 ppb. Can we have our own criteria that is not more than 500 ppb? And if so, who to decide on the level? The question from Astrid Sepira, the number 3. Do you can see the question?
Yeah, I understood the question that you said. So thank you for asking this question. And yes, you can set your acceptance criteria if it's less than 500 ppb. Anything less than 500 ppb, you can set it. Just it should not be more than 500 ppb. Now, the next part of your question is how to set that specific limit. So, for example, you decide to set a limit of 300 ppb. So 300 ppb is a value which is not a random value that you came up with. What you do is you see a trend of your water system, and based on the trend, like how regularly you are getting a similar trend of your TUC value. Based on that, you set up the action limit. So this is also called as action limit. A lot of pharmaceutical company do this. They have the inner control limit and an action limit. So after the action limit, you have the first is the warning limit, and then comes the action limit. So for example, you are every day getting a TUC close to 50 ppb after purification and filtration. So if it's around 50, 60, 70 ppb, so usually what you know is to keep a double value, which is to be on a safer side. So double is not a criteria anywhere, but this is how the pharmaceutical companies think, that if my regular trend is around 50 to 60 ppb, so I should have a comfortable value like around 120 to 150 ppb as the warning limit. So when it crosses 120 to 150 ppb, in that case, it's kind of a warning to you. And once the warning is done, suppose you get a TUC around 250 ppb and your action limit is 300, but it's still below your action limit. In that case, no action is to be required. If it is 300 ppb is your inner action limit or the acceptance criteria, and if it's around 350 ppb that you get, it suggests that there is something wrong with your filtration or the purification system. So in that case, you have to stop using the water for production and then start troubleshooting and identify the reason where it means if there is any leakage in any kind of valves, if there is any pipe which is leaking, atmospheric carbon dioxide is getting inside, or what can be the reason, or maybe there is a growth in the generation system. So there are many factors to rule that out. So the value that you come up with should be scientifically justified. So it all depends on the daily data that you have and the trend that you get. So based on the trending of your water system, you come up with a safe value which is less than 500 ppb, but at the same time is your internal action limit which you have, which can be referred.
Thank you, Mr. Rohit. And can you answer to number 4?
Sure, if you can share your screen again.
Thank you. Very clear for your the question and your answer. And can you the next question about the Cahayu Putri Anadia again? Can you see the screen?
Yes, I can see the screen.
Okay.
Thank you.
I want to ask about the daily analysis using dosimeter. The dosimeter must be SST every each different sample type of only once a day in first shift analysis. Then is there any alternative besides using sucrose and benzoquinose for SST? Or maybe I can use one of both CRM. Can you please
so thank you for your question. And the first question which you have is the TUC meter must be SST every each different sample type. So the answer, so my counter question to you is, are you talking about an online TUC or a lab TUC? If it's a lab TOC, definitely it's a good practice to do once in a day at least. It depends on your sample load. If your samples in a day are 50 samples and you have the TOC in the lab, if it's a lab testing, then I would recommend to do at least two system suitability in between the sets of 25. So maybe your first SST, then run 25 sample, then do a second SST, then run another 25 samples. If the sample load is very high. If the sample load is less, like 10, 15, or 20, just one SST in a day is enough and suffices your need. But again, I am not the one who should give you the frequency of SST. SST is a practice of the pharmaceutical company and it falls under your scope. Like you should have a scientific data and you should have a study to back the frequency. For example, you just have 3 samples in a day and you have a lab TUC. And instead of doing daily, you decide to do the SST weekly. But then how did you arrive at the 7-day interval? That decision should be based on a scientific justification. So you should have some data, like for example, 60 days. Every week you do SST and you show that the SST passes every time and the instrument is robust and stable. And based on this data, I decide that the frequency of my SST henceforth should be once in a week. Similarly, if you decide to do once in a day, you should again have the data of maybe 60, 70, or 80, 90 days, or maybe 6 months to back it up and say that based on so and so data results, I decide to do the system suitability once every day. So the scope of selecting the system suitability frequency is for the pharmaceutical manufacturer. What should be the frequency of calibration? That is something that I can recommend. So it falls under the manufacturer's recommendation. So similarly, I hope I have answered your query and I have tried to make it simple. But ideally, if it's a lab instrument, I would request you to do some data-driven exercise. And once you do that, depending on your sample load, once in a day or twice in a day or once in a week or once in a month, it all depends on the data that you have. The last part of the question is if I can use anything else apart from sucrose and benzoquinone for SST. The answer is no. If you are complying with USP, EP, Chinese or Indian pharmacopoeia, you have to use sucrose and benzoquinone both and not any one and not anything else. Apart from it, these two are mandatory, and this is as per chapter number 643 that we are talking about in USP. So yeah, there is no other alternative, and it's also not that any one you can do, you have to do both. Thank you. You to stay healthy. Take care.
Thank you, Mr. Rohit, for your explanation. It's very good and can help to the question and customer. So that is last question because we can see the time is very short. And then now we need to photo session. Again, maybe I can use the Indonesia language. Thank you for terima kasih untuk Bapak Ibu. Mohon dibantu untuk mengisi absensi kembali. Saya ingatkan supaya kami bisa bantu untuk kirimkan e-sertifikat yang akan dikirimkan ke Bapak Ibu yang sudah ikut join, dan boleh untuk kamera di-on-kan supaya kita masuk ke sisi foto untuk foto bersama. Saya dibantu Bu Linda, apakah sudah ready? Kita tunggu ya supaya semuanya di-on-kan semua. Baik, sebelum kita foto, ini masih ada yang siap-siap, Bu Linda. Ada yang masih gelap mungkin biar lebih kelihatan. Baik, jika kita akan melakukan 2 atau 3 kali foto, supaya semuanya oke. Baik, saya akan hitung 3 kali, nanti akan direkam. 1, 2, 3.